So my guest today has got a serious issue with bringing his passengers back after taking off for a flight at air shows. Stay tuned if you want to find out why. This is the Jet Set Podcast, and I'm your host, Chris Chiocho. This show is your ticket into the world of general and business aviation. You're going to want to stay tuned, and welcome aboard. Very, very excited for a guest on today's show. He's got all the aerial filming and aerobatics pilot experience that you can imagine. He's the owner and chief pilot at Airborne Images, a member of the Red Bull's helicopter team, the Flying Bulls. He's worked all over North America on over 100 film and television projects. He's an American badass, having served in the United States Army as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, a guy that's done things in helicopters that I wish I've had the chance to do. Please welcome Mr. Aaron Fitzgerald. Give us a little backstory on you. Take us back to, it's Wenatchee, right? Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Wenatchee, Washington. That's where I'm from.
So take us back to Wenatchee, Washington, where little Aaron grew up, and walk us through how you've ended up to where you are today, so our audience gets to know who you are.
Happily. Wenatchee is a little town in the center of Washington State. When I lived there, it was about 20,000 people, the population. Interestingly, though, because it's situated kind of in the mountains, in a valley there with a river flowing through the middle of it, two rivers actually, there's a Forest Service base there, and it's also surrounded by property that was logged for many, many years. So as a kid, I saw a lot of aircraft flying over my house from all different types of the industry. So we had firefighting aircraft, helicopters, and Boss-check bombers. At the time, they called it Borate, I think. But then there was the logging industry there too. So there were a lot of helicopters flying over, and I just was fascinated watching whatever I was doing. Whenever a helicopter went over, I stopped and would watch it go over. Whether I was in the middle of a football game or whatever I was doing, I would have to stop and watch that helicopter go over. So it's a lifelong dream of mine to fly, and particularly in helicopters. It's just always been an interest of mine and a passion.
Nice. So you got bit early on just by being surrounded by it, right?
Correct. Yeah. Just seeing everybody else do it, I wanted to go so bad. I was one of those kids with my nose in the fence at the airport, Pangbourne Field in Wenatchee. I would sit there and watch the Forest Service aircraft come and go all day.
Hey, so when's the first time, and what did that look like for you to get into the cockpit of either helicopter or plane for the first time? What was that story like?
The first time I actually flew was a quick tour in San Francisco Bay in a Jet Ranger my dad bought me. We went off the pier at Fisherman's Wharf and took a lap around Alcatraz and landed. It was probably about a 5-minute tour, but I was pretty hooked. And then the second flight I took, this is kind of funny. This is encouraging for people who maybe have a rough start in their entry into their flight training. But I took a class called Aerodynamics and Weather for a science credit at my high school. And it was taught by a pilot, Mr. Griffiths, coolest guy ever. But he took us all up. Part of the class is that everybody got to go for a ride in a Cessna. And I won the coin toss, and I got to sit in front. So I was in the co-pilot seat, and he let me fly. And I didn't have any idea what I was doing, of course. I was 15 years old, and I made myself airsick. So I actually threw up. My first time I ever flew an airplane, I threw up. And then I never threw up again the whole rest of my career. So if you have a problem with air sickness, then rest assured you can work your way through it.
You can work your way through it. So you got your first tour, and then you got flying on doing that science credit stuff. So where from high school, I guess, talk us through the military to getting into aviation from a commercial standpoint, commercial pilot license, and walk us through that step, how you went from your private pilot to commercial to whatever certifications that you hold today.
Okay. When I got out of the Army, first of all, when I was in the Army, I was enlisted. I was a paratrooper. I was an artillery guy. So I didn't fly. I got to ride around in helicopters, which is not the same. It's awesome, but not the same. And then I jumped out of quite a few of them and got a bunch of airplanes too. So I always enjoyed being in the air, and I was fascinated by all of it. But when I got out of the Army, it was 1994. I moved to LA, and I started training in Long Beach at a place called Everything Flyable, which was a huge school. And they had fixed wing and rotary wing, and I just went straight into rotary wing and worked my way through all my licenses, which is amazing now looking back, because at the time I didn't have any money saved up. I didn't really have that great of a job. I was bartending. I don't know how I did it, but I paid for one lesson at a time and just worked my way through. And then early on, I was able to get a job working in a news helicopter. Not because I had any affinity for the news or that was an ambition of mine, but I noticed that helicopter flew more than all the other helicopters on the field combined. So I kind of gravitated towards those guys because they seemed to be the busiest. So I ended up flying news helicopters in various capacities for about 9 years. And then on the weekends, I would fly I would do sports production. So shooting aerials for NFL games, Major League Baseball, any televised sport, I would go and shoot the aerials. And we did that from a number of different platforms: helicopters, airplanes, and blimps. And the blimps are a lot of fun. It's like going out for a boat ride all day. It's a really cool way to spend the day, especially over a big sporting event. But that kind of gave way. I realized how much I love the cameras and shooting and the creativity of mixing aviation and camera work. And that's what led to the production stuff, which I kind of segued into. After my time at the news started to wind down, it was kind of taken over by production. And that's what I focused on mainly from then on, with a few forays into various types of flying, like utility, did some power line work, stuff like that. But almost all of my flying has been in helicopters, and almost all of it has been commercial working time. Very little of it is, pleasure going to get the $100 hamburger.
Nice. And actually, ironically, more reason why I think we jive so well. I started off my enlisted career in the Army as a Red Leg as well.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you.
Fort Sill.
Hey, me too. All of us, I guess. That's where all artillery guys go through there. So you were 13 Bravo.
Yeah. And then a 13 Alpha, then dropped my packet to go to flight school, got picked up, and flew helicopters that way.
Hey, well done. That was the path I intended to take, but it didn't work out quite that way for me. So I had to make it happen another way, which is another good lesson. If your first plan doesn't work, don't give up. There's always a way in.
Yeah, don't give up. So when you said you found a way to pay lesson by lesson, how long did that take you? Because to me personally, I think rotorcraft is harder than fixed wing in the training aspect and learning. So it probably took you a little longer than somebody going the fixed wing route through their training. How long was that progression for you from your initial flight to solo to certification?
Well, I can't remember the exact elapsed time on the calendar, but I remember, here's a funny, interesting story. Talk about being broke. I don't know how I came up with the money for each lesson, but at that time you could get a Robinson R22 with an instructor for $95 an hour. And everybody just spit their coffee out right now going, what? But that's how much it costs in 1994. So it wasn't as bad as it is now in terms of, outlay, expenditure. But because I was so broke, it made me the most focused student in the world, because I knew I didn't have $1 extra for 1 extra minute of flight training. So the minimum time that you have to have logged and flown to take your private pilot check ride is 40 hours, right? So I hit 40 hours and I went and took my check ride. So when I landed and he shook my hand and said, congratulations, you're a private pilot in the helicopter, I had 40.9 hours in my logbook. So it was the exact bare minimum, but it focused me because I was doing all the work myself. I was paying for it myself. I had no savings account. I got out of the Army with, I think I drove to LA with $200 in my pocket or something like that. But I just made it work, and it focused me tremendously because I didn't have really any other plan. It's all I wanted to do, and so the sacrifices you make financially are easy when you're young and you're so focused on just making something happen one way or the other. I think it's harder if you have other commitments that are kind of dividing your attention and dividing your finances. Certainly possible, but for me, I was able to just go all in, both feet. So I would say I got the private license probably within 4 months or so. And then probably another year while I combined working and earning more money and getting the commercial license. And then I was very lucky that I went to work right away as a commercial pilot. I think I had maybe 350 hours, and I went right into the A-Star, the AS-350, which is also unheard of today. Nobody gets a job at that little amount of total time.
No, that's incredible, because none of that, again, happens today. And you went in, I mean, full send into the deep end, not really knowing where that path will lead. You just know that that's what you wanted to do, right?
Correct. Yeah, I had no idea how I was going to make it into a career or what path it was going to take me down. I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to fly helicopters so bad, and every second of it was enjoyable. I remember flying along on my first solo, and I was on the downwind leg, and all of a sudden it hit me. I was sitting in a helicopter all by myself, and I was flying it. I was so excited. I started yelling, woo, flying along, all patting myself on the back. And then the low rotor horn went off because I had let the rotor RPM droop while I was congratulating myself on how cool I was. So For about 5 seconds, I was super cool, and then I was scared out of my skull for the next 20 while I figured out what I had done and how to fix it. But in those days, the Robinsons didn't even have governors, so you had to manage the rotor RPM, the throttle, by yourself. And if your attention was divided for just a second, it would droop off on you. So I very quickly learned that we pay attention when we're flying helicopters.
No, that's funny. Tell me about what's been like your most memorable moment flying out of all the things you've done covering sports events, movies, film, television, through your whole flying career thus far. Share with me your most memorable experience.
Well, there's been quite a few. A couple things stand out. Pretty much any day flying utility in the mountains, building power lines was a highlight. It's just so much fun to do that. You have a long line on, you're working around big towers and power lines, and you're in the mountains, high aspect, steep terrain, stuff like that. So it's just a huge challenge every single day. And that was a huge highlight for me doing that stuff. Unfortunately, I don't get to do a lot of that anymore because my career's kind of taken me a different path. But in terms of specific jobs that are very, very memorable, one was very, very recently. That was about a month ago. I got to fly at Oshkosh for the first time. I'd never been to Oshkosh before, and I went there my first time as a performer and got to do aerobatics in front of the crowd. So that was a massive highlight. Another huge one was my friend Luke Akins is a big skydiver, and he did a stunt a couple summers ago called Heaven Sent, where he jumped from 25,000 feet with no parachute and landed into a net, an arresting device that he designed and that we built and tested and developed. And the whole process of developing that net and proving all of our systems took about a year. And it involved a whole bunch of really fun flying because we got to build a test article that was his exact body surface area and his exact weight. And I got to drop that into the net from various altitudes throughout that year-long testing. And it was a ton of fun being a pretend bomber pilot, being able to hover over this net at 1,100 feet AGL, and then release that test article and then watch it sail down into the net. And every single one of them looked like a horrible miss because of the parallax when you're looking straight down. So it was very nerve-wracking, but very rewarding. I only missed one time, and I had a whole bunch of bullseyes. So I'm pretty happy, but I'm still embarrassed about that one miss.
That's awesome. So help for people that haven't experienced flight yet. I mean, because we know when we talk about flight, like the excitement and the joy is like palpable, right? Mm-hmm. Help explain in your words, like what excites you most about flying to people that maybe have not had the luxury to experience flight yet.
Oh my goodness, what a challenge to describe that feeling. It's a combination for me. It's a combination of science and art and creativity and magic. I mean, it's everything because you're taking a machine that's built just particularly in the case of a helicopter. It doesn't look pretty sitting on the ground. It doesn't look like it can fly. You know, you look at a P-51 Mustang and it looks like it's just born to fly and it's going to fly whether you go with it or not. But a helicopter is completely different. You feel like you've coaxed this machinery into the air. And then once you're there, you're in a completely three-dimensional environment. As you know, you can go any direction you want to. You can stop. You can go backwards, straight up, straight down, whatever you want to do. In my case, I get to do loops and rolls and hammerheads and Immelmans and all that stuff. So to be able to just express yourself in the air is it's tremendous. And then also, I think, too, having the responsibility of other people's lives in your hands, particularly flying utility. You know, there were many times when we do what they call HEC or human external cargo. So you have a person on a 50-foot line underneath the helicopter, in many cases, two people at a time, and you're putting them into a really dangerous environment, dropping them down into two live power lines. You put them down onto the tower in between those phases. And it's hard to describe how focused you are when you're doing something like that. And that's just hugely rewarding. It just feels great to be able to accomplish a mission like that and get everybody home safe at the end of the day and turn around and go, look, we built that. It's just a great feeling. I'm sorry, there's no specific way to describe how great it is. It's so many things. I can talk for 2 hours about it.
No, that's great. Again, that's what I love about this show is that everybody has something uniquely different about their own experiences, and yet there's the same underlying theme about it all that we just love to share. So no, that's awesome. You'd mentioned Oshkosh last month, mm-hmm. that for your first time there, Oshkosh. Talk us to us about what it's like flying with the Red Bull helicopter team. And kind of the story that I mentioned where you take off and all of a sudden you're the loneliest guy in the aircraft and you're flying back by yourself.
You never get used to that. I drop those guys all the time. I'm fortunate I get to work with the Red Bull Air Force, and they're the top skydiving team in the world. The Red Bull has two teams. There's one in Europe. They're based out of Salzburg called the Red Bull Skydive Team. And then we have the Red Bull Air Force here in the United States. So I get to work with the Red Bull Air Force guys all around in the country. And working with them is, first of all, they're all just hilarious, really charismatic and funny people. But they're the top skydivers in the world. So it's great to be able to go and work with them and not have to worry and watch what they're doing because they're top level professionals. But the part you mentioned that I never get used to is when you take off and there's 4 or 5 people in the helicopter and everybody's laughing and joking and high-fiving and talking about whatever, and we're talking about the winds or whatever's going on with the air show. And then they all go out the doors and you're sitting there all by yourself. And I never get used to that. It's the strangest thing. But now there's a new element. We add everything together. So they'll all jump out. And then I descend back into the show box and do my routine. So I kind of rejoin everybody at the bottom. But when we're doing a demo, when I'm dropping them into an event, I don't see them again. It might be days or weeks before I see them again after they get out of the helicopter.
No, that's great. How many shows have you done with the Flying Bulls?
Oh, very few. This is my first season. I've been flying helicopters for a long time, but I've only been performing at air shows for this season. So my first show was in March at Luke Air Force Base. And I've since done 4, and I have 5 or 6 more on the schedule for this year. So this was kind of a transition year because it's my first year performing. So we'll have fewer shows this year than we'll end up with next year. We'll have a full schedule of shows next year, it looks like. But yeah, I've only done 4 shows, and one of them was Oshkosh, if you can believe that.
So you land the big one your first year, your rookie year.
It's pretty unheard of. I'm not delusional. I know that I wasn't invited there because I'm so great. I was invited there because I'm part of a team that was already booked, and then I ended up being the guy that got to fly it. So it was a huge honor. I don't have any misplaced bravado about why I was there. But it was really fun to just see it for the first time and be a part of it and fly in that aerobatic box where so many huge names have flown. You know, everybody from Bob Hoover, Sean Tucker, who was there this year. It was just crazy. You go down the list of all the people that have flown at Oshkosh, and now my little name is on there. So I'm a proud and humble little rookie.
There you go. And you said you got a handful more shows this year. Where can people expect to see you for the rest of this year?
The remaining shows in 2018, we have the Red Bull Air Race in Indianapolis. That's October 6th, 7th. There's a show to be announced right after that, the following weekend. And then we have shows at San Bernardino International Airport here in Southern California. We have one at Lake Havasu. We'll be at the Red Bull Air Race in Fort Worth. There's one that I'm missing. And Minden, Nevada. We'll be at the roundup up there. I think that's 2 weeks after Air Race. But it's all on my, it should be on my Instagram account at Aaron Fitzgerald 105. That's where you can see all the announcements for air show dates coming up.
At Aaron Fitzgerald 105 Instagram, right?
Yeah, the 105, because Aaron Fitzgerald is not a unique name. There's a lot of them. 105 is because we fly a BO-105. That's the Red Bull helicopter. So Aaron Fitzgerald 105. And I'll try to post as much as I can in terms of upcoming shows. But I know for sure the next one is the Indianapolis Red Bull Air Race on October 6th, 7th.
Well, you know that's home base for me. So I expect that we're going to get to hang out and do some stuff when you come into town.
I'll do my best lever pulling for you if I know you're going to be there.
Yeah. So no, that's great. You led right perfectly into what I wanted to talk about next is your aircraft. Give us the layman's terms rundown for your aircraft, and then let's get to some specifics of why it's so special, because obviously you've got a lot of modifications that most normal people wouldn't have access to on that aircraft. So break us from the 40,000 foot level down to the granular level with your aircraft.
Okay, so it's a fairly lightweight twin engine helicopter. It might be the smallest twin engine helicopter on the market in the fleet. It's tiny. Our max all up gross weight is 5,200 pounds. So it's a 4-bladed, 2-engine, single pilot helicopter. It was originally designed for the German Army as an anti-tank helicopter. So the manufacturer was Bocal. Messerschmitt Bocal Bohm is the manufacturer. So it's an MBB BO-105. And the reason that it's unique is because they designed it to fly high speed nap of the earth. So if you imagine going 100 knots straight forward, you got to pull up over a row of trees. You're going to get a high G load as you pull up. And then as you come over the tops of the trees and you push back down again to fly down the backside, wherever the obstacle is, hills, trees, whatever, as you push back down, then you get a pretty good unloading. You can get -1 or -2 even, which for a helicopter is a lot. The aerobatic airplane guys are laughing their heads off right now. But for a helicopter, that's a lot. And in the early designs of helicopters, they used teetering rotor systems, and you couldn't unload them. So you had to keep a positive G load all the time. But this one, because it has a rigid rotor head designed for nap of the earth flying, allows us to do aerobatics as well. So the aerobatic show is kind of a byproduct of what the helicopter was truly designed for. And it was meant to be flown very aggressively at very high speed because of where it was going to be deployed and what its mission was going to be. So it was designed around the anti-tank mission. And then we found a fun way to entertain everybody by using it to its full capacity and flying aerobatics with it.
No, that's great. And now, is that what you fly all day, every day, or is that part of the Red Bull team? What's that relationship with that aircraft?
The aerobatic helicopters I fly are owned and operated by Red Bull, and they always have been. They have a fleet of aircraft in Salzburg, so there's about 30 aircraft in Austria at Red Bull headquarters. Most people, I don't know if you know, but Red Bull is an Austrian company. All the headquarters and everything is based there. So the main Flying Bulls operation is in Salzburg. And then here in the United States, we have 2 BO-105s, and we generally have one kind of on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. So that's how we have it right now. They're both based in my hangar in Los Angeles, but one of them is usually on the road. And those aircraft are, let's see, I fly those for the air shows, and obviously I do a lot of practice in them, and I do whatever Red Bull needs me to do. But primarily when I'm doing my everyday flying, doing film and television, I fly the AS-350, which is a completely different helicopter, built for a different purpose, flies completely different. And the bulk of my career, I've done maybe 90% of my film and television work in the AS-350. So I'm relatively new to the BO-105. I've only got a couple of hundred hours in it. But overall, I've flown a bunch of different types throughout the years, and I don't know if I'm answering the question properly. I kind of wandered off topic there. I start talking about helicopters, I lose track of what the question was. But I think it was every day. What do I fly? And the answer is usually an AS-350, which we call the A-Star here in the States.
Yeah. So what's your favorite airframe then? Or that
right now, today, my favorite airframe is my little airplane. I have a Decathlon, and I get to go do loops and rolls in that thing, and I love it. But if I had to pick one aircraft for the rest of my career, I'd probably pick the AS-350 because that thing's just great for everything. Although running a very, very close second is the BO-105, because do I ever enjoy doing aerobatics in that thing? It's so much fun.
That's awesome. So obviously, you're kind of like the rock star of this industry. I mean, you've got this super sexy like career path and flying and do these great things, but there's a bulk of the industry that makes up the majority of either commercial airliners, business aviation, and military. What are your thoughts on this whole quote unquote pilot shortage that we know that we all keep hearing about? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a great time to get into aviation, obviously, for young people. I don't know what the perceived obstacle is when young people don't make the connection between the aircraft they see flying and a desire to do it, and then the first step of going down to the airport and signing up for lessons or investigating it. Somehow there's a perceived obstacle there that we need to work on lowering or removing that obstacle and let people know that this is a viable career path. And it's challenging, obviously, to get in, to work your way through all the training and everything. The more passionate you are about it, and the more you love it, the easier all that is. Like I was saying earlier, the obstacles in your way tend to disappear when you're so focused on the goal and what you decided to do. But I think we need, as an industry, to convey that how easy it is and how welcoming it all is for people to come in and join us, join the fun. There's so many great jobs you can have. And even if you're not into flying helicopters upside down or building power lines or doing something that's perceived to be risky or glamorous, maybe you want to be kind of a working guy or girl and flying the airlines every day. That's an awesome job, and those guys do very well. There's a lot of ways to have a fulfilling career in aviation. I think we need to do a better job of kind of getting the word out and letting people know that there's something for everybody in this field and in the career in general in aviation. You can kind of build whatever lifestyle you want around whichever job or career path you choose.
Do you think we do a good job of, because you said you're not sure what that perceived obstacle is, but you grew up at the airport at the fence, looking at the everything taken off the approach end. In today's world, we do everything online. Everybody researches and finds things. Do you think we're doing enough in that aspect of where we are at in today's digital world to reach people and educate people and get that awareness that, hey, this is, like you said, a viable career path. There's plenty of opportunities, and it's pretty much an open road to do whatever you want in this space, because right now is a great time, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. I think we do. We're already doing a good job of showing off what we can do as an industry, as a career. You go online, there's all kinds of videos of guys flying Blackhawks and women flying fighter jets and airplanes landing a bit. I mean, that's there. All the bright shiny stuff is online. Anyone who wants to go look at it, like my kids do all day long, they watch videos on YouTube of every kind of aircraft you've ever seen. I think the missing step, though, is to encourage people to come and try it. Whether we need to give out more rides or get more kids to the airport or have a easier access designated spot where kids can go stick their nose in the fence like I did when I was a kid. I didn't come from an aviation family, and a lot of us in aviation today didn't. A lot of us came in completely on our own out of the blue. And I just would love to make sure that path is still open to those behind us. I think we should all try to encourage people that are new to it more than what we do now.
Yeah, no, that's so. Do you see any correlation though with, like, I don't know if it's regulatory or restrictive, or maybe again because traditionally, again, people I think just associated with either military or the airline industry, that again, we think it's sexy. We think it's awesome that we've got these super sleek toys. But do you think that's been lost in translation to the general public?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, I think that the visual candy out there, it exists. People can look and see all this cool stuff. They come to air shows, whatever that. We're showing what we can do for sure. I think we just need to close the gap between what we're showing. This is the top of the game. Here's Sean Tucker performing in front of 600,000 people at Oshkosh. That's awesome. But I think we need to reach to people where at the decision-making stage, where do I go? Who's the first person I talk to? Is there a flight school near me? Just basic steps. I did all that without the internet back in 1994 because I wanted it so badly. And it's not the guys like me that you need to worry about. They will find us. But it's the people that have the ability and the desire, but just can't put the connection together how I start. I believe that's what we should focus on, and just introduce our world to more people. And that's automatically going to just open up the doors for the young people coming in today that are going to be the ones that address this pilot shortage. It's the perfect time to come into aviation right now.
Yeah. So where do you see the industry going in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I know what I'm going to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to see a growth in the airline industry. I mean, just in my adult life, I've seen a massive increase in the amount of air travel. So I think there's going to be huge opportunities for people that want to pursue that goal. And it also seems to me that the private jet industry is very robust. There seems to be more private jets at every airport today than there were in the past. I don't know if that's just a perception, if I'm paying attention more, but it certainly seems like that industry is very healthy and is continuing to grow. So I think that passenger transport is always going to be, for the next 5 to 10 years, I foresee great growth there. And then also the utility industry, just from a helicopter standpoint, building power lines and infrastructure, that's going to be a growth industry for the next 5 to 10 years too, because as the mandates that we rely more on renewable energy, like we in California 10 years ago, I think, or somewhere in there, they resolved that more of our energy was going to be from renewable sources. So the manifestation of that is that we had to build new transmission networks and new grids to tie in all the wind farms and solar panels and all this. So it just created a whole bunch of work that benefited the aviation world. And there's always more research and development, seismic. There's all kinds of work out there that can be done. And I think there's going to be general growth across the whole industry.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got vertical lift stuff that's getting developed. You've got things like SpaceX and all these great things that are just coming down the pipe, and it seems so futuristic. It's like the jets and stuff, but it's really here, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You touched on the private enterprise and space program. They're going to be a huge boon. I think it's great that that's the private sector's taken over space travel and the launching of satellites into orbit and all that. They're doing it for such less money, and it's going to make the end result. I believe the long term is that there's going to be more of that because now it's reachable. Now businesses can participate. They can launch their own satellites, whereas before it was all government controlled. NASA did a great job for many years opening the way, but now it's private sector. And then you touched on also a lot of the unmanned aerial vehicles. Drones of every sort are going to be a huge growth industry. So for a lot of people who maybe like me threw up on their first flight and they keep throwing up, maybe they get to fly drones. There's going to be opportunity for everybody. But yeah, the drones are huge. We've seen a massive increase in the use of drones across all the different industries, and I think that's going to continue, obviously.
Yeah, and so knowing that we've got, again, just tremendous growth opportunities, tremendous career potential, what's maybe 2 or 3 things you wish you knew before you got started down this path?
Oh, geez. I think I don't have any regrets in terms of my career path. I think if I was going to give someone coming into the industry advice, I would say, don't do it exactly the way I did. I went straight from the Army into aviation, and I kind of skipped the whole college thing. I wouldn't recommend that. I would go ahead and get your degree however you can, by any means. Get that and add that to your resume. I would probably encourage people to get more ratings, be dual rated in helicopters and airplanes, and go all the way through airline transport pilot on both sides of the fence, and just be as qualified as you possibly can. Whereas I kind of got ratings as I needed them. When they became necessary, I would add the rating, which I don't think I would do that again. I think if I had the means and the opportunity, I would try to get myself a little more well-rounded on the education side of my chosen career path. So that would be advice I would give. And then in the specific, when I get young pilots calling me all the time, and they say, what can I do? I want to do your job. How do I get there? And I say, well, there's really no straight path to my job. But if you want the job you want, whatever it may be, you got to work a little harder than the other guy or girl. You got to be a little nicer than the other guy or girl. And you got to be a little better than the other guy or girl. So study more, work a little harder, be a little nicer all the time. And that's just general life advice. But specifically in aviation, we're such a small community. There's only 600,000 licensed pilots in the US, right? And in my little world, in helicopters, only 40,000 of us. So I guarantee you that I can make a direct connection between you and me in about 4 or 5 names, right? So it's easy to get the word on somebody and all. So the nicer you are, the harder you work, the easier. All of a sudden, these doors just open. You don't know why they open. So that's not specific aviation advice, but I would certainly tell a young pilot to kind of follow those guidelines.
Yeah, and that's really why we're here today. We're trying to connect. I reached out to you. We're trying to connect each other, our networks, and bring more people into the space. So I think you're absolutely spot on with that. I guess to kind of wrap up here, when you're flying or anything, I guess in the space, or people getting into it, do you have like a favorite tool or something that you like to use? I mean, it could be something tangible, it can be software. I don't care. Is there something that you really like to have when you fly?
I really like my Lightspeed headset. That's for sure. Having that noise canceling and the Bluetooth and the music, that's just massive. It's so great compared to where we were when I first started flying in 1994. We didn't have noise canceling headsets. We didn't have GPSs that were in wide use. It was very. I mean, I learned to navigate with a pencil and a stopwatch and a compass, probably just like you did in a sectional, right? So I don't know how I would do that today. So yeah, I fly now with a lot of GPS aids. I have ForeFlight, of course, loaded on my iPads and my phone and everything else. So that use the technology that's out there. The newer helicopters I fly today have systems in them that would have been unheard of when I first started flying. It's all so easy now with the traffic avoidance systems and radar altimeter and synthetic vision and everything. It's a lot more fun because now you can concentrate on what you're doing instead of all those instruments and navigation the old way.
Yeah. No, I love you. It's easier and more fun than you probably think. I like that takeaway. What's your playlist when you fly and listen to music?
My,
What's on Aaron's playlist?
oh my goodness, I'm all over the place. Right now, I like a band called The Green. They're out of Hawaii. They're kind of a modern reggae band. That's my specific favorite right now. But my playlist is crazy from 30 or 40 years of music. It's everything from Metallica to Portishead, everything. I listen to everything on my playlist. But now I've learned the art of skipping songs that I don't love. So instead of sitting there and suffering through a song I don't really like anymore, I'll skip it. So I always keep a nice playlist going on in my head. I love it. I listen to music when I'm practicing too, but so far I haven't listened to any music while I was actually performing in front of a crowd. We'll try that next.
Get like Danger Zone playing in your headset or something.
The Top Gun theme. Yeah. They're shooting a new Top Gun. We'll see if they have the same theme or not.
They are. What's the hardest thing about your job?
If you're talking about the Red Bull job, the aerobatic performance, the hardest thing, no question, is that last 40 minutes before the show. The nerves kind of get up. You kind of focus a little bit. You might either be sneezing or yawning incessantly. You might be walking laps around the helicopter and chewing 14 pieces of gum. It's calm. You're calm in general, but you feel yourself getting more and more focused. And then there's about a 2-minute period where I'm thinking, why did I agree to do this? Why do I have to do this for a living? But then, of course, as soon as you start the engine, everything calms down, and then you get up there in front of the crowd, and it's just so much fun. And then, of course, I'm a completely different person when I land, and I'm Mr. High Five Woohoo guy. But it's that first couple of minutes right before you fly. That's the worst part for me. I get a little nerved up, a little stage fright, probably.
Yeah. Do you ever get scared? I mean, obviously you practice maneuvers and do all that stuff, but do you ever find yourself just completely like, holy cow, this is crazy?
Not so much anymore. Now, I when I'm out practicing or performing, I concentrate on doing it better. It's kind of a moving target. There's no such thing as perfection in aerobatics, so you're always working toward it. So there's always that goal of just trying to improve. Just this morning I was watching a video of one of my performances at Oshkosh, and I was looking at that going, there's a whole bunch of improvement in every single one of those maneuvers that I have room for. I could do that a lot cleaner, a lot better. So that's what's going on in my head now. But the abject fear that's gone. But it did happen the first couple of times. I remember when I first got turned loose to go practice doing loops, I went out the next day because I knew if I delayed and thought about it for a long time, it would grow into a big thing. So the boss told me, all right, you're good. Go practice loops on your own. So I went out the next day, and that first one, I'll tell you what, the few minutes leading up to it was pretty scary. But then once you start, that's the thing. Once you're committed to the maneuver, you got the only way out is to finish the maneuver. So once the nose is 45 degrees or more above the horizon, the easiest thing to do is pull all the way through the loop and come back out again. So that's another good lesson for life, right? The hardest part is starting, is committing to making the maneuver. Because once you start, the easiest way is all the way through. The emergency procedure for aerobatics, in almost every instance, if you have a problem during the maneuver, you finish the maneuver. You get the thing straight and level again. So that would be the takeaway life lesson, is whatever you start, just look at the final goal. Once you're committed, you got to go. The scary part's committing.
Yeah. And everybody's got instructors and kind of mentors. And I think it was you've got two guys that you really kind of look up to, right? When you were learning aerobatics, can you talk about those guys and then the importance of mentorship?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The guy who taught me, Rainer Wilke is his name. He's the most experienced helicopter aerobatic pilot on earth. He's been flying the BO-105 since 1974, and he's been doing aerobatics in it since 1984. So I was very, very fortunate that I got to train with him, and I learned directly from him, from the source. And then our chief pilot is a guy named Blackie Schwartz. His name's Siegfried Schwartz, but Schwartz means black in German. He's an Austrian, so everybody calls him Blackie. But those two guys were my two teachers. To me, it's just a massive, fortunate thing for me. I feel so lucky that I got to learn it straight from those guys, because the next generation of if more people come behind me and learn this, they're going to have to learn it from me and from some of the other guys who learned from those two. But I got it from the original source, and it was tremendous, just great timing. And I'm just very, very happy and fortunate that it worked out that way. But there's been other mentors for me too. There's a guy named Rich Lee here in the States who's the guy who actually signed my aerobatic competency card. And he used to do an aerobatic display with the Apache, if you can believe that. And he used to do it at full mission weight. So fully loaded with fuel, rockets, guns. The whole idea was to prove the capability of the aircraft. So he would do it at max gross weight and do a full aerobatic performance at air shows in an Apache. So fortunately, I've become friends with him over time of doing this, and we exchange emails, and he gives me all kinds of great advice. So there's a lot of kind of old hands guiding me and helping me through this. I didn't just wake up and decide that I want to go do loops in front of people. It's been a process, and there's been a lot of people helping me and encouraging me and keeping me safe, and I'm really thankful for it. A lot of fixed wing guys are really helpful too. Like Kirby Chambliss, my teammate, he couldn't be better, just really welcoming. Mike Goulian, all the air race pilots, all those guys, they all know me from being around air race, and they're all happy for me and encouraging, and they all have advice. So it's a very welcoming community. So yeah, I've been lucky. I've had some really smart, really experienced guys helping me out, making sure I don't screw it up.
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from the big guys, though, and you said it's a very welcoming community. I mean, for people that are kind of hesitant or on the fence about this, and they're looking to ask questions and figure out the answers. So you said we just need people to get in here and realize, again, it's easier and more fun than they think. Do you think we're receptive to welcoming those questions and that connections from people that might have questions or looking again to get some clarification and kind of that extra little nudge to push them over the edge to come into our world?
Yeah, I've certainly seen it from some of my colleagues and some of my peers in the industry. They have great patience with talking to new people and helping them out and trying to be welcoming. And that would be, if I was to give advice to both sides of the fence, I would say to the prospective aviator, don't be afraid to walk up to any old salty pilot, whatever they're doing. If it's a woman captain flying a 747, or if it's a fighter pilot or a war hero, UH-60 guy like you, they should just walk up and ask questions, because the reason we all do this is because we love it. So we love to talk about it. So don't ever hesitate to ask for advice, to get some guidance from somebody, for help, to be introduced to people. Just don't be shy about it, because the reason people do this is because it's their passion. So they're going to be welcoming to you. So you just have to have the guts to walk up and ask for it, or introduce yourself. And then on the other side of that, the advice I would give to our peers, established pilots, is say, when you meet someone like that, slow down, take a breath, and put yourself back in their shoes, which were your shoes not too long ago, right? And take an extra minute and find out where they live and who's the nearest flight school. And if you know somebody, make a connection, answer a question, offer a few words of encouragement, because we need more people in this industry, especially the smart ones and the brave ones that are brave enough to walk up and ask you about it. At least do them the favor of answering the questions and helping them out to the extent that you can, just like people have helped us. I've had people help me along the way every day. I mean, still today, I've been flying for 24 years. And this morning I sent an email to one of those guys asking for advice on something. So it never stops. So it's both ways. Give the advice, ask for the advice. Let's help each other out. And the rising tide raises all boats, right?
Absolutely. I love that quote. And that's a great thing to wrap up on here. And is there anything else that you want to maybe some parting words of wisdom or anything else that you want to plug or talk about?
Like my friend Kevin Coleman says, fly good, don't suck. That would be my advice to everybody. No, just kidding. I don't have any specific advice for anyone, but I would say welcome to this world. This is such a great career and a great thing to get to do. It's such a privilege. So come try it for yourself.
That's awesome, Aaron. Well, thank you again for the time today. This was so much fun. Excited to see what other conversations come up in the future with us. So appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Jet Set podcast. You are the reason we do it, and it would seriously mean the world to us if you can go and leave a rating on iTunes. Your recommendation is the fuel that keeps us going.